Welcome, and let's get started. And real quick, for those who are new, what is the purpose of a webinar? We're going to provide training for Logos Bible software. We're going to provide training so you can study the topic for yourself. We're going to provide biblical insights when appropriate related to the topic. At times, it will feel a little fast-paced. We include a lot of information to increase training value. Training at times may be complex with multiple steps, but other times training is going to be easy to follow along with few steps. But all webinars are recorded for purchase and review offline, so you can pause me, rewind me, and that way you can pick up what you miss. And normally we include a presenter's notes with a personal book, but tonight's webinar is a little unique. So we're not going to have a personal book, but I do have PowerPoint slides for some of these things, so that way you can just pause those slides and get the information that way. All right, just a couple more announcements. Our next two webinars, Thursday, November 6th, which is next week. We may need to change that. In fact, we will be changing that. I've had another conflict. Sorry for my schedule. It does change with work and everything, but we'll give you a new date on that. Probably the 5th is what we'll do the day before. And then the next one will be 11/20, how to study the doctrine of salvation. So really excited for those webinars, but we'll shoot you an update. I have to figure out when to do the illustrations, applications, and AI. All right, let's begin. Now, in the past, I have done many webinars on building a Bible study layout. And so I'm going to give you a link right now for a webinar that I've done. So I'm going to paste that right here in the chat box. I'm going to go ahead and open that up on the website, and it just takes a moment to get there. All right, it's called Bible Study Sermon Preparation 11 Essential Steps. We also cover these steps in the Logos 10 training and so forth. And if you've been with me for any time, you see me use these all the time. Now, this particular webinar is all the background and setup, which I'm not going to cover today. That would be very redundant. But I wanted to point this out to you so that you can pick this up, and that way you have access to it. So as I draw from these 11 steps, you're going to know where I got them from and where they are. If you purchase the Logos 10 training, you already have the training videos to do this. But this video, real quick, just will walk you through each one of these steps I'm about to show you. So just wanted to bring that out for you. All right, now with that, I'm going to give you a document. So let me go ahead and add that document real quick here. So one more second here. It's always a little tricky to do the documents. There we go. And I'm going to grab this from my computer, and then we're going to add this right away to you to download. All right. And this sermon template that I'm uploading to you is something that I use every week. As you know, I also work a full-time job. I run this training ministry, and I'm also a pastor of a church plant about 3 years in. And how do I manage all this? Well, I use Logos very efficiently and very effectively. And one of the things I've developed is a weekly sermon template. And we're going to be looking at this template and drawing from it. So here's what it looks like. Now, what I've done is I have created these little titles. So here's the title of the sermon, the time, WPM is words per minute, implications, and then I break down the major sections. You have your introduction, which includes a greeting, an engagement, a proposition, outline, and a transition. And then I put in this body time. That's to let you know that we're in the body, and then if you want to put in the net time, you can do that. When you use time, it goes back to this words per minute. So I speak now. I've slowed down quite a bit. I'm roughly, when I preach, probably 110 up to 120 words per minute. So when I write my sermons out, and I do write full manuscripts, I'll know exactly how long I'm going to be because I can calculate that out. So I do like often to look at the words that I have written, and that gives me a good feel for how much time I'm spending. Now, I don't do this as much as I used to because I can kind of eyeball it, but you get the idea. Now, the way this sermon template is broken down is it's into 3 major points. Obviously, you could have 4, 5, or more, but a typical sermon should have 3 major points. And so at point number 1, and then there's the basic 4 sections for every point. There's engagement. Now, typically engagement will always be me reading the passage and then me maybe asking a provocative question. Then we get into the exposition and explanation. This is where I'm going to actually explain the text. And we're going to spend a lot of time on this, walking from Logos and how you fill this template out. And then there's the exhortation. This is the application, or I'll give a principle, or I'll summarize and make a point there. And then we have the exit, the transition. That helps me make sure that I make it clear to the audience, I'm done with point number 1. I'm now going to point number 2. You'll see that the template repeats those same 4 E's, and then point number 3. And then we come to the conclusion, which is we review the outline, we repeat the proposition, but in a concluding way, and then we give our final engagement, our exhortation, and then we transition to prayer. Now, this template that I've given you tonight, which will be included with a link to download, this is how we organize the information. And we're going to be coming back and forth to this quite a bit tonight, just to walk you through some examples. So that's the sermon template. We've walked you through the 11 steps, and we're going to go through those in a minute here. And let's do this. All right, so let's bring up Logos, and you can see those right here. I kind of have a few things I was working on before I got started. So these 11 steps are located right here, LearnLogos.com study method. And that webinar will walk you through how to create these 11. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. And that's actually, if you add them all up, that's 11. And each one of these steps is going to open up a custom layout, and there's going to be a focus of particular information. Now, the praying portion, let me just click on that and open it up, is more for preparation, all right? And there's a prayer journal here, and there's also some notes. And we have we have the prayer categories. You can see those 12 here, pretty straightforward. We have 5 critical prayers for Bible study. We have some inductive questions and some theological observations. Now, this step is just you and God and God's Word. You're reading and you're praying through the text. And you might be writing some questions down, but nothing here is going to go into the sermon yet. But later we will put some stuff in there. So I'm going to kind of skip over this first step, but I at least want to touch base with it. Then we come to the observation step, all right? And in this step, this is where we're asking the who, what, where, when, why, and how, those 5 W's and H's. And then we have our first custom guide. Notice that what we have here, we have biblical people, places, we have maps, events, things, topics, biblical theologies, and collections. Now, what we're going to do here is we're just going to walk through our text, make some observations, and again, we're just writing this down in our notes. We're writing down any questions that we might have, as well as any answers, and that we have right in the text. But this is just our initial observations. And again, this is not going in our sermon just yet. This is all preparatory. This is to make you familiar with the text that you're studying and that you're getting yourself ready to study. Now, the one thing that this step and the previous step that you must do is write down every question that comes to your mind. Don't try to answer it, but you're going to write those questions down. You might put in notes, you might put in Word, doesn't matter where, but you're going to write every question down that you see or that comes to mind. And the reason you're going to do this is because later, at the end of the sermon process, you're going to be very familiar with this text, but your audience is not. So by writing down the questions that you had before you had the answers, you're going to be able to connect with the audience when you strategically place those questions in your sermon or in your message. So that's why writing down questions is so important. It's not the answer. That'll come in due time, but writing down those questions will be important. All right, so we're going to go now to where we begin the process of moving from exegesis to exposition. Now, let me go back to my PowerPoint real quick here and make a couple things that I want to say. I didn't know if I put it in here. I thought I did, but I guess I did not. All right. Yeah, this is the one we want. Okay, so we're moving from the ingredients, the raw vegetables, the uncooked material. This is the information we're collecting through the 11 steps exegetical process. And our goal moving from exegesis to exposition is to cook it, to take all these ingredients and, in a sense, make a meal that's presentable to our audience. The best example is cookies, right? You got some flour, you got some cookie dough, you got some, all these things, ingredients you're putting together, eggs, chocolate chips, whatever your special recipe, sugar, etc. And certainly you can have some of that cookie dough and you can eat some of those chocolate chips, but that's not the cookie. Those are the ingredients. And most people want to have the final product, the meal. That's what's truly ingestible. And that's what we're going to try to do tonight, is to show you the connection between the steps of the ingredients to the steps to ingestion. That's the idea here. All right, so let's work through these steps and watch how we can take this raw data and turn it into a wonderful meal to be enjoyed by the audience. Now, this first step is really the outlining step. And what I'm going to do is just pull up an outline that I'm working on currently right now. I'm in the book of Revelation, and I just finished outlining Revelation chapter 11, verses 15 through chapter 12, verse 6. A little bit longer section, but nevertheless, this is where I'm at. All right. So what I do is I open Canvas. And to do Canvas, it's pretty straightforward. All we got to do is go to the main menu, click Docs, and then click New, and then do Canvas. All right, pretty straightforward. And then what we do is we open up the Canvas, and in the Canvas, we're going to insert the passage. So we click Insert Passage, and we type in our passage, in this case, Revelation 11, 15 through 12, 6. And you can choose your preferred English Bible. Now, if nothing comes up, just wait a second, click again. Make sure you click the red ribbon. That ensures that your passage is correctly typed. And then all you have to do is click your Bible translation. I use the Legacy Standard Bible right now. And then you click Add to Canvas. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to bring in the biblical text right here. There it is. Everything is right there. And you can see there's a big difference in what we brought in to where I have my final text. I've color-coded all the subjects blue. I've color-coded all the verbs red. At the left, the primary clauses, and I've indented the subordinate clauses. Very important. And then what I've done is I've grouped them. You can see those lines here. And then I, over at the right, have a preliminary outline. In this case, 3 major points. Now, again, the goal here is not to do the exegesis. The goal is to show you how to take this raw ingredient and put it into a meal. So what I do is I use, just for what it's worth, I use open text. Let me go ahead and open that up. And you've seen, I've done many videos on the open text. And open text has a clause visualization. And so I'll go to Revelation 11, 15. And this will help you understand what's going on. So you can see that this PC represents primary clause. I have a main subject, the 7th angel, and I have its main action, blew the trumpet. And if we go back to my outline there in Canvas, you can see the 7th angel has been bolded in blue. And I've made sounded red because that's the main action. And that's it. It's a primary clause. It stands alone. And I would continue this process all the way through. And again, purpose tonight is not to walk through this process. I covered that in other videos. Then I take this main section, I read it. And essentially what I notice is that there's a pattern from even the previous chapter 11, verses 1 through 14. There were 2 witnesses. Well, this is kind of fascinating that there's actually 2 messages. We have the 24 elders, they speak. And then we also have this 24 others who spoke, but up here we have these loud voices in heaven. So we have 2 messages, the kingdom of Christ, the kingdom and Christ. That's really what this is. Then fascinatingly, continuing verse 19, we have 2 objects. We have the sanctuary of God that was open, and we have the ark of his covenant, 2 objects. And I noticed that in my outline, God's sanctuary, ark of his covenant. And then we have the 2 signs. We have this pregnant woman and the dragon. So very fascinating that there's this dualness that's going on, these pairs of objects from the 2 witnesses going forward. So I'm playing off of that. Very easy to see. Now, what do we do with this outline? How does this work? How do we go from this raw data to something that's usable? So let me go ahead and pull up my actual sermon at this point. So let me go to my sermons. And here we go. And I'm going to go to my message here. Let's make sure I'm in the right one. There we go. 2 witnesses. That is the right one. And I need there it is, right in front of me. All right. So this is what it looks like after I get this done. So I basically already have a title for it. If you don't have a title, save that for later. That's okay. But I do have the verse range. There it is. And then I have organized the information. So I have my preliminary outline. There it is. Now, pretty straightforward. I could revise this later, but I stick it right here under the outline section, and I write one sentence. Last week, we were introduced to the two witnesses, and this week, our outline will continue with the several more sets of two, or several more pairs. That's probably even a better way of saying it. Okay? Notice that I'm not putting a transition or anything like that, but I do go to point number 1, and I copy that outline right here. And then for engagement, I put in the full passage I'm preaching. So that's how I move. After I outline, I immediately move from that to my template, and I put that basic information. I started working on the message, and we'll come to that in a minute. But here we have now point number 2. Again, I put the outline in. I put in the biblical text. I move to point number 3. There's the outline. There's the biblical text. All right. So that's my engagement. Now I can add more engagement if I so choose. I may have a question that I had for my steps of praying and observation. I may or may not, but this is a straightforward way. Now notice at the bottom left in my Word document, I now have 673 words. Now I aim for my preaching, I aim for about 4,500 words, but that can range from 4,000 to 6,000. For me, 4,500 words is roughly 35 minutes of preaching, give or take a few minutes. Sometimes I'll add things extemporaneously on the fly. Other times I won't. I'll stay very close to my manuscript. But by keeping an eye on this, I can see where I'm at. So let's say we go with a 4,500 sermon. I've already got 700 words done. That leaves me roughly 3,800. With 3 major points, all right? So we're doing pretty good. And again, a good rule of thumb is anywhere from, if we have 3 points and we do 1,000 words for each point, that's 3,000 words. If we have an introduction and a conclusion of 500 each, that's 1,000. And then if we add, so that's really 4,000. And then if we add all our transitions and any other little extra questions along the way, that's going to get me to about 4,500. So that kind of helps you feel the kind of text you're doing in there. And that includes the biblical text that I'm reading as well. All right, so let me pause here. This is a good place to stop and see if there's any questions that you have moving from the outline, the raw outline, to now moving into the manuscript, the template, where I've added these key points. And this will make you feel like you're accomplishing something, and you are, and you're getting more organized. You'll notice that I'm studying and writing, studying and writing. I used to be study, and then write. And what happened in that process, unfortunately, is I would forget what I had studied. And so I have moved now to more of a model of study and write. And that has worked very well, but the key in making that work successfully is having it blocked off of your text. So I'm studying one section, and therefore everything I'm studying, writing is just for this one block of text. And so that works very well. I'm not mixing major sections, and that has allowed me to move more quickly. There's less rewriting that I do when I do it this way, and allows me to stay more on point. Plus, I'm keeping track of my words, on my word count, so that I don't have too much on one and not enough of the other. All right, not seeing any questions, so let's go back to our Logos Bible software, and let's go to our next step. And that's going to be word studies. All right, so I'm going to click on word studies. Wait a moment for Logos to open up, and let me bring that over here and maximize the window. All right, so here's the word studies. We have our Bible at the left. We have our word studies custom guide at the left, or at the right, left of the 2 tabs here. We have our Bible word study. We do have our search engine, and we have our preferred dictionary. Now, this is set up where if I click on any word, let me go back to Revelation 11. All right, let's go to verse 15. If I click on any word, let's say the word loud, and I click on it, right away my Bible word study moves. So I have a link to all the dictionaries, but I have a quick summary of what it is. Megas, we're familiar with the word mega, same idea. I have the actual dictionary, my preferred one, gives me a real quick understanding of what it is. And in this case, we've got great, much, degree, large, all pretty straightforward. None of the passages are highlighted, so I have to kind of discern the idea behind it. But obviously, a loud voice would be a great voice. A loud voice, that's the idea. And pretty straightforward there. So I'm working my way through the word studies. Now, for word studies, there's two primary things I'm trying to figure out. What does the word mean? And that's accomplished through the glossary that we see here, great, loud, big, the mini definition here, and then the more in-depth definition here. But that's only part of it. The second part is the morphology. And this is where you may need some help with grammar. We'll come to that in a minute. But for now, let's just focus on meaning, all right? We get that from our dictionary. It's pretty straightforward. Now, the tricky part of all this is that this word is part of a phrase, which is part of a sentence. The phrase it's part of is right here. And the easiest way to do this is just look at the commas, the semicolons, etc. So the first phrase is, then the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying. So there's really three little clauses in here. Now, if you want to be super precise, all you got to do is go back to that open text, okay? And we can see those clauses, all right? So the first one is the seventh angel blew the trumpet. That's clause number one. So we would focus on those words. Clause number two happens to be the next primary clause, and there was a voice loud in heaven saying. There's our second groups of words we would study. And then the third one, has become the kingdom of the world, of the Lord, or Christ, etc. This is in Greek word order, so it doesn't read naturally, and then so forth. And there's our fourth one, okay? So when I'm doing word studies, I'm actually focused on these primary clauses because this is the idea. And then when you put all those clauses or those ideas together, you now have complete thoughts. And when you put several thoughts together, you get a complete sentence. So it's very important to be working that way. You're working at the word level, to the clause level, to the sentence level, to the paragraph level, to the book level. That's the idea here. So when I study the word loud, all right, I'm going to figure out first what's that connected to? Voices. So I look up voices. And when we click on voices, in fact, let me turn off the fact book because that sometimes gets in the way when we're doing this. All right, there we go. We click on voices. All right, so this is clearly a voice, pretty straightforward, a sound. In heaven, it's a sound that has words because there's words that follow. So this isn't very complicated, but it's a pretty straightforward phrase. There's loud voices, there's mega voices, and it's more than one. We can see that in English, but if we float our mouse over it, we can see down below that it's a noun nominative plural. So many voices, a choir of voices. And then the first part is the seventh angel sounded. Now we know from the previous context in Revelation, this is a trumpet sound. So the trumpet sounds, and then following the trumpet sound are these loud voices. And that begs the question, did they say something? And that continues the verse. And then we have these key phrases. The king of the world has become the king of our Lord and of his Christ, and he'll reign forever and ever. So we learn that the king of the world has now become God the Father's, because that's of our Lord and of his Christ. So we're distinguishing here between God the Father and God the Son. And then he will reign forever and ever. That is probably speaking nearest antecedent would be Christ. And so it's going to be referencing Christ reigning. Okay, so I want to take a moment here and say, how do we now take these individual word studies that we do, and how do we take that into the exegesis, into the exposition? Now, the way I do this typically, and I'm going to bring up another sermon just so you guys can see some real examples. So I'm going to go to documents here, and let me open up a previous sermon that I did. Let's see, sermon, here we go, my previous message. All right, let me hide that additional information. So I'm going to scroll down, and let's go to right here. So this one's Revelation 9:13 through 21. Okay, and let's look at that text so you guys can see what's going on. So I'm going to click on Revelation 9:13 through 21. There it is. Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice. Notice it's not a loud voice, from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, and so forth. Now, how do we convert this into exposition? And so here we are, and this next slide is going to be very helpful for this. There are four basic sentence types. There is what we call declarative. This is where you're stating a fact or opinion. Jesus wept. Then there is the interrogative. This is where you're asking a question. Why did Jesus weep? Then you have the imperative. We're going to give a command. We're going to give an instruction. And then there's exclamatory. We're expressing some strong emotion. These 4 sentences is how you convert raw material into your exposition. And you're going to use these 4 sentences. Very powerful, very helpful. So let's go back here, and you can see this. We begin this morning with the 6th angel sounding the 6th trumpet. All I did was repeat in a declarative way, because this is not a complicated statement, all right? Well, they just know that this is the 6th trumpet. And then John then hears a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Again, another declarative sentence. And this is very typical in our exposition. We're restating the information in a way that our audience can understand. And we may add a little bit of detail. We might repeat. And then look at this. We have back in Revelation 7:15, we learned that the throne of God is located in the sanctuary. The Greek word for sanctuary is temple. There it is. There's our word study. So we're letting people know that the word sanctuary actually is the word temple. And that's a very important concept. And that's how we bring in word studies. Notice I didn't mention the Greek word. The only time I mention the Greek word is if it sounds like an English word, like mega. But in this case, I did not include that. So that's how we're going to bring the word studies in there. We're going to say the Greek word for sanctuary or the underlying word in the original language. Those are some of the phrases. And that's it. That's all you have to do. And you only do this when it makes the text more clear. That's the idea. Now, the reason I brought this is because we were talking about this altar, which is before God. And we learned in 7:15, for this reason, they are before the throne of God. They serve him day and night in a sanctuary because these people were before the altar, if we look at that. Okay, so I'm just trying to help people visualize and say, you might have noticed that John has been referencing altars as far back as Revelation 6:9. Let me read that passage to refresh our memory. And there it is. They saw underneath the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God. All right, so let me pause here. That's how we do basic word studies. Very, very straightforward. Just inserting the meaning in along the flow to bring clarity. That's what you're looking for. If it's very obvious in the text, you don't have to say it. But if it's not obvious in the text, if the original language needs a little help to the audience, then you want to do that. You want to give that to the audience. Okay, so that's word studies. Let's go back to Logos. I'm not seeing questions. Let's go to the next step. All right, and that's grammar studies. So let's open up that, and let's bring the Logos over. And here we go. Oop, almost got it over. And it's always a little tricky to bring these over on the larger screen. All right, so the grammar studies, again, pretty straightforward. Here's our biblical text. Here's our custom guide. And here's our search. Now, let me just put in Revelation 11. Again, I'll put 1 this time just to keep it simple. So we have grammatical constructions. We have grammar references. We have figurative language. We have concordances. We have lots of information that is coming here. And we go through and we read all this. And again, what we're looking for is insights. Okay? Now, I mentioned the morphology. And this is where it's a little tricky. I have it sometimes in the word studies and sometimes I do it here. In both steps, I'm looking at it. So for simplicity, I'm going to go back just a little bit because I do want to cover the other information. So let me back up just 1 second here. All right. So the word studies right here, the custom guide, has this section word by word. And the reason we have this up is we want to look at the morphology. Now, we're in Mark 10:46. Let's go back to Revelation 11:1, just so we have a reference here that's somewhat familiar. I don't want to jump around from too many passages from one to the other. All right, so I can't type. There we go. Revelation 11:1. Now, it says here, then there was given me a measuring rod like a staff. So the verb here is given. By the way, there is a visual filter that I have called New Testament Verbs. I'm going to go to Formatting. I'm going to click Visual Filters, enable it. And you can see that I have some of these extra different visual filters. Just make things a little bit easier. But let me go down to NT Verbs. That's the one I really want. And we got a lot of these. So the purpose of the visual filters is to get my attention. So here we go. Our first verb is given, and it's in the passive form. Now, passive is basically saying the subject receives the action, all right? So in other words, he wasn't doing the giving, someone else was doing the giving, and that's what passive means.